desire to want to improve their daily physical activity, but how to go about it or how to get started usually stops somebody from continuing on. Living an active lifestyle can be difficult when there is a lack of daily motivation due to your busy routine. One of the area of research to increase physical activity has focused on tracking the number of participants' daily steps. There have been several studies that have examined this through using various forms of pedometer trackers, such as your classical pedometer, a Fitbit, social media, an Apple Watch, and so on. And those help and assist in recording the daily steps. One study done by Lerstrup, West, Olson, Ward, and Stevens, 2016, an increase in physical activity decreases the risk to heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. Majority of the population worldwide is not physically active enough to decrease these health risks. They also stated that the recommended amount of daily steps to be taken was approximately 10,000 or 5 miles. And this is going to help maintain that healthier lifestyle. Bassett, Wyatt, Thompson, Peters, and Hill, 2010, determined that lower levels of physical activity contribute to higher levels of obesity. They also compared this in a study for the United States to other countries such as Switzerland, Australia, and Japan. The number of daily steps or ambulatory movements was significantly lower in these other countries in comparison to the United States. Although they did mention that those who were already users of pedometers did find that they were more motivated to increase their ambulatory movement after participating in the brief survey they took. And it also said that they might have been more motivated because they were aware of the long-term effects of not increasing daily exercise. Lerstrup 2016 also designed a 13-month study for 107 medical students to wear pedometers daily. However, not enough participants reached that goal of 10,000 steps, but several agreed that just using a pedometer itself made them more aware and more conscious of their need to increase their physical activity. Again, there was still that lack of motivation. Motivating factors was then explored in a study by Pale, Chang, Eager, Binns, and Donovan, 2009. They discussed the importance of goal setting and receiving immediate feedback. By having direct access to the steps taken on their pedometer or whatever other device they used, it was said to lead an increase to your overall physical activity. They also discussed that the limitations of wearing and using a device that does not allow the frequency of steps taken to be viewed freely as contributing to a decrease in your motivation who is seeking to increase your daily exercise. Foster, Linhan, and Lawson, 2010, researched individual steps through comparison of 2 participant groups monitoring the effects of socially mediated intervention versus independent monitoring. The social group used a pedometer and manually inputted their steps through a Facebook app that was specifically created for the study, and they called that the Step Matrix. Prestig, Perugi, and Herling, 2009, also designed a study with 702 students from a university having 2 control groups, in which the first group worked out without connecting to anybody socially about their workout routines, while the second group, the individuals worked out, received and sent motivational text messages to others. Individuals who were not a part of the social text messaging group were designed a specific workout plan that they would adhere to. Both studies demonstrated an increase in motivation and actual physical output when engaged in some sort of social networking, such as Facebook or text messaging among your peers. So these last 2 studies mentioned inspired our group to further explore the use of pedometer to track daily steps alongside the use of social media in order to increase an individual's daily steps. We hypothesized that being able to track daily steps while being socially engaged through social media will create a platform for increased or sustained motivation needed to increase an individual's daily steps. Now let's switch over to Miriam so she can discuss the methods section to our research study.
So we had a technical difficulty and Mary dropped off. So our methods section, I'll go over. I'm Ashley and I'll go over.
She had a power outage. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh.
I saw it get dark all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she lost her connection.
Okay.
Should I go or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yay, live recording. Okay, so our method section involved 5 female participants living in various places across North America. Participants were employed full-time working with children with autism who had been randomly assigned and consented for this experiment. None had previous knowledge or reference of one another, and all participants were familiar with and consistent users of social media in some capacity. So Facebook, text messaging, or other cell phone applications. They recorded their daily steps within the parameters of their daily life based on their chosen technological device. Steps were recorded at home, at work, at concerts, during the weekends, etc. No environment was out of scope for this setting. Wherever participants had to be, steps were valid and recorded. Materials used in this study were technological devices to record daily data steps, as well as the device and application used within the socially enabled groups. So devices used to track steps were a Fitbit, an Apple Watch, and an Android cellular phone application. The social media utilized within the socially enabled groups were text messaging for Group A and GroupMe chat for Group B. Individual steps were defined as any step taken in any direction, at any pace, inclusive of steps taken while walking and running. Inclusive steps taken throughout a 24-hour period, resetting each day at 12 a.m. Steps included were taken anywhere. They could be inside, outside, at home, at work, on the grass, on the pavement, on stairs, etc. Truman fidelity for the non-social groups was measured by the absence of communication between participants. A common forum was developed for all participants on a GroupMe application where participants were able to recognize and socially engage with one another without making mention of their results or the experiment at large. For the socially enabled groups, message history was shared periodically to ensure that social reinforcement was being provided and shared commonly among group members. Observer Agreement, IOA, was observed by evaluating the daily step data from randomly selected dates inclusive of all phases of the experiment across all participants. The raw data from each device was evaluated against the graph steps each participant had been recording daily. I will now outline the procedures in which we utilize in order to complete this replication project. Each participant was equipped with a technological device used to collect their daily steps. 3 participants utilized a Fitbit watch to track their steps. 1 participant used an Apple Watch, and the 5th utilized an Android phone application called For Free Pedometer. To accommodate the varying time zones and working schedules, steps were tracked over a 24-hour period, beginning and ending at 12 a.m. each day. The experiment took place over 20 days, in which participants were randomly divided into 2 groups: a socially enabled group, which relied on the social praise and motivation, utilizing social media, and a non-social group in which participants were just individually going about tracking their steps. Baseline data was collected for 1 day, where all participants went about their daily routine without regard to their pedometer tracking devices. No information, praise, or motivation was provided among participants during baseline. Daily steps tracked in baseline ranged from 4,876 to 7,045 daily average steps. Group 1 consisted of 2 females who started the experiment in the socially enabled group, while Group 2 consisted of 3 females who began in the non-social group. Each participant spent 5 days in each phase, repeating each phase twice over the course of the 20 days, engaging in a reversal design. In the socially enabled groups, participants encouraged one another through text messages, sharing their data throughout the day, providing additional motivation and social praise. So social praise and motivation in the socially enabled phase included just checking in, being like, where are you guys at, and sharing your data of your current steps at that moment, and then providing encouragement such as if you had the less amount of steps taken, your teammates would be like, it's okay, there's more time left in the day, encouraging messages such as, you're doing awesome, that's a great count, way to go, keep it up. While in the non-social groups, participants were able to track and evaluate their own data throughout the day. They had no interaction among group members, and this was not permitted. Any reinforcement or motivation was contingent on the individuals themselves. Accuracy of step tracking data was collected by sharing a randomized sample of dates as screen captures from the hardware of each participant's device during each phase. I will now introduce Jessica, who will go over our results section.
Hey, I'm Jessica. I'm going to screen share real quick so you guys can see. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Everything's good? Okay. So I will be going over the results section with you all. I made a graph that is shown here. And it's basically showing the amount of steps of each phase for each participant involved in the study. The gray bar shows the socially enabled phase. So that's the one where we were all communicating with each other. And the black bar is showing the non-socially enabled phase. So when we were just kind of tracking our own data without talking to each other. As you can see, no matter how many steps were actually recorded for each participant, the socially enabled phase exceeded the non-socially enabled phase for each participant. It would be safe to say that utilizing the social devices helped increase our steps throughout the day. So here, I just made an overview chart to kind of give you more clarity on the amount of steps taking place for each participant and during each phase, excuse me. And once again, you can see the socially enabled phase exceeded the non-socially enabled phase for each participant. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and show you my personal graph. So I was participant 1 in our study. So just to kind of touch on my progress throughout the study, I'm just showing you my graph here. So you can just kind of have a visual of how I progressed throughout the whole entire study. I did find myself really wanting to push myself to step up more on the days where I had to tell my other group members what I was stepping, especially during the last phase when I knew how to step it up, literally, to get some good numbers on the board. The only thing that was kind of a hassle for me was when my device would die, or if I knew it was dying soon, I had to go run and get to the charger or put it on really quick. So I felt like that was kind of a limitation and not giving me like that 100% completely accurate data that I was looking for. But I really found that was pretty much the only limitation I had throughout the study. I used the Fitbit and I found that it was pretty accurate and gave me a good measure and good read on how many steps I was taking. It was just a bummer when I had to go dock it up on my charging thing, and I tried to do it when I was sleeping, but I mean, then again, sometimes it would just randomly die and I had no idea it was dying, so I had to, you know, take it off for 30 minutes or so. But overall, I really enjoyed the replication of the study, and I'm really glad the results turned out the way they did. And now I will give you over to Ashley so she can explain her results.
Thanks, Jessica. So I was participant 2. Share my graph here. So I'm just going to address my results for the replication study and outline any barriers anecdotally derived from the data. So during my 1-day baseline, I produced 5,515 daily steps. You can see here. And my daily step output was fairly variable, with only a slight increase in steps taken within the socially enabled phases. On October 12th, my least number of steps in the social group phase was calculated at 4,547, whereas on October 29th, my greatest number of steps was calculated in the socially enabled phase at 13,704. My overall average of daily steps within the non-social phase was 74,454, whereas my average among the socially enabled phase was 82,144. With regards to the variability, I believe this can be attributed to my work schedule. Some days I am in center, whereby I am more mobile, versus days where I am in the community and I am actually less mobile. Additionally, my social calendar contributed to any incremental steps taken on any given day, regardless of phase. I believe my daily steps were more contingent on my schedule than the reinforcement I received or did not receive in any given phase. I would also say that my motivation was more attributed to the competition I felt and closing the gap on my peers' tally within the socially enabled phase than having the ability to receive the social praise for the steps that I had taken at any given moment. And in terms of limitations, I also think, having your device on you at all times and being sure that it was charged was also a bit of a limitation to me, as I utilized a cell phone application. So now Allison will go over her data.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Let's see here. All right, can you all see my graph? Okay. Actually, that one's Marianne's. Hold on. Here's mine. So if we look over at my graph, basically, I will touch base on my first step. My baseline data was 6,595. Then the first one was my socially enabled group. I used a Fitbit to go ahead and track my daily steps. Mary and I both we were both part in the same control group, and we both used the Fitbit and would cheer each other on or taunt each other on through the app and share our steps. And whenever she would go ahead and text me, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I have to get moving. As you can see, I did have more steps in my socially enabled group. There were some limitations for phase 2. I was on vacation, so I just didn't wear my Fitbit at all because I didn't seem to care. And I also didn't bring my charger for it either, so I had to use my phone. So that was a limitation, and it's very hard to always have your phone on you. My highest number of steps will happen during phase 3, which was 17,542, and my lowest happened in a non-social group, which was 1,061. I can say that by the end of the study, I was contributing more steps. That whole dip down kind of was a bummer because of social events. But overall, this was a really good study to go for. And I think that my results have improved. I've actually been keeping up and making sure that I've been getting 10,000 steps every day. So I've been continuing forward from this research study. I'm just going to briefly show you Miriam's step. Based on the chart in our paper, she too had more steps in our socially enabled group. I know that she really worked hard on trying to get as many steps as she could, and every day when she was low, she'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so low, and I would just give her a lot of verbal praise, and she'd go ahead and push herself hard. So now I'll lead it over to participant 5, which is Amanda.
Oh. Okay, so
Amanda?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So my, let me start the screen share. Okay. So participant 5, me, this graph is kind of the prototype for this study. As you can tell, in each phase, that was only the pedometer. I had my lowest amount. And then the socially enabled phases, I had my highest amounts. My highest amount overall was 9,365, which was during the socially enabled phase 2. And then my lowest overall was 2,902, which was found in phase 1. So it's evident that the socially enabled part actually really helped. I do remember at one point we were all sharing our data, and I was completely behind, and I was pacing around my couch to get my steps up. So I think that having this socially enabled group, sorry, I'm trying to stop the screen share. Okay, I think that having the socially enabled group really, really helped increase my steps. And as a lot of people have said, I've continued tracking my steps. And one of the major limitations, which I will actually continue to discuss in the discussion section, was the electronic dying throughout the day. That was difficult, I think, among all of the participants in the study. So moving on from my individual results, overall, the discussion part of the report, overall, the study serves to report findings on the efficacy of social media and praise on increasing exercise. I think that social media messaging was effective, encouraging a behavioral change with each participant, whether it was motivated for competition or motivated for the social aspect of it. So the results indicate that each participant increased their overall steps during the socially enabled phase of the intervention, and it suggests that social praise is actually effective in increasing exercise. This information can be used to further increase health trends across the population, given that obesity and lack of exercise is a growing concern in the United States and worldwide. So while our experimental design offered several advantages, such as the randomized selection of groups, a socially enabled group and a non-social, and also the systematic reversal design, several limitations do exist with regards to the participants' ability to replicate the study to its fullest. The biggest limitation was the participants. This replication only consisted of 5 participants, and the demographics of each participant were not randomized, as each participant was a female enrolled in the same master's degree program, indicating a similar field of work and typically less at risk than other groups in the broader population. Also, 4 of the participants lived in the United States and 1 was from Canada, and we all share very similar cultures. Another limitation was that the outcomes were self-reported, and this may be subject to inaccurate recall and social desirability bias. And then also, as mentioned, the big limitation was our ability to track inter-observer agreement. Each participant should have used 2 different types of step tracking devices during the sessions, which IOA was calculated. And we should have compared the 2 devices to calculate inter-observer agreement. Also, with regards to the devices, if we were to replicate the study again, then the devices itself should actually be the same across participants. We had 3 people use a Fitbit, 1 person use an Apple Watch, and then another person use an application on the Android cell phone. So not only the actual devices, but also the method in which the steps were calculated among the devices. Some were wrist applications and some were phone applications, so you had to actually rely on having your phone on you 24/7, which I know is not feasible for a lot of people. And then in addition to the types of devices, also the battery life of the devices. I think everyone across the board experienced some point in which the battery died during the day and we'd have to charge it. And we'd have to try and not walk while we're charging it. So that was an inaccuracy in our step tracking. I think that any further use of this study should involve a non-electronic pedometer, kind of the normal old days. Sorry, I don't know how to describe it, but the non-electronic, sorry, I got lost in my screens, versus the electronic device, because we had a lot of electronic limitations. So overall, I think that the limitations did not outweigh the actual study itself. Excuse me, sorry. And I think that this study could actually serve as a basis for future studies in exploring not just the steps calculated, but the intensity of the exercise, because it's been shown that exercises lasting more than 30 minutes are more effective in losing weight and battling obesity. And also, I think another thing that should be explored in future studies would be the type of social media used. because we use two different types of social media among the socially enabled and non-socially enabled. Among the two socially enabled groups. They were both text messaging based, but I think we could explore different types of social media and maybe a more public forum to kind of eliminate the social desirability bias. So that is our study.
Okay, very nice job, everyone. You did a nice job presenting. Your graphs looked beautiful, so good work to all of you. A couple questions, and you guys can just kind of speak up, whoever wants to answer, or if you want to take turns answering, that's fine as well. How many of you had used the pedometers prior to the study?
Not me.
I had not.
I did.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay. So a little bit mixed. For some of you, it was something new, and others had already used them.
Mhm.
Okay. And you said you were all, consistent users of social media, so that part didn't present any issues. For those of you that were using the Fitbit, were you also using the app that comes along with that? And did you have any social contact with other Fitbit users during the study?
Miriam and I both were in the same social group, and we both used Fitbit. We both used the app. We talked via text messaging and on the app because you can like cheer each other and taunt each other on the app. But I was also following my sisters and my friends as well. So, but I feel like I kind of got them all hooked on it when I told them what I was doing. So.
Yeah, so that was one thing, because I've used a Fitbit in the past, and I really like that app for that reason. But I was thinking that could be a confound, because even when you weren't socially enabled with people in your group, you still had that social connection with others, and that can be kind of motivating if you're competitive, especially if it's your sister. I know that's who motivates me the most. So, okay. So looking at your graphs, which of the reversal design graphs, which of the graphs would you say demonstrate a functional relationship between having the socially enabled group status and walking more steps?
I think my graph definitely shows the functional relationship.
Yeah, I was gonna say Amanda's definitely.
Because there's a dramatic difference, especially, when we actually did reverse from socially enabled to non-socially enabled again. I dropped down, and then I stepped it back up.
What about the others? Did you think any of the others did?
Mine stayed kind of consistent, like there was a little increase, but it wasn't like Amanda's where you can really see between the two phases the difference.
Yeah, I think that the contingency of the social group was more evident in Amanda's.
Yeah, Amanda's definitely. Miriam's shows a pretty good depiction of it too, especially with like the last two phases, the social phase and the non-social phase. I thought that one showed pretty significantly on hers.
Okay, good. Good. Okay, so then when you combine the data into that bar graph, it looked like an effective intervention, right? To use socially mediated. The socially mediated phase. So what does that tell you about kind of the advantages or disadvantages of a group design versus a single subject design when you're thinking about, looking at interventions for your clients?
I mean, as with all designs, anything individual is going to be individualized. One thing is not going to work for everybody. So as I think Ashley had mentioned, the socially enabled group really didn't work for her to push her forward. It was more the competition. So that's very indicative among our clients that one intervention is not going to work with every single client that we have. And a group overall, the group shows that the socially enabled actually helped us, but individuals within the group, it might tell a different story.
Right. Yes, you got it exactly. I mean, that's the importance of the behavioral research design is particularly because when you're looking at group studies in, say, the field of education or psychology, oftentimes you're looking at typically developing individuals or people who respond typically to different interventions. And we know that often our clients are the outliers from that population. So that really is one of the advantages of using these single subject designs when looking at interventions. However, on the flip side, those group designs give us an idea where to look first. So you kind of commented that overall it was an effective strategy, one worth trying, but then you want to evaluate it at the individual level as well. So very good. And then what do you think just generally, is there something that spoke to the social validity of using this intervention? You guys, a couple of you said something that struck me as giving this some social validity. I'm wondering if you might have noticed what that was.
I mean, it kind of just acts more as like your motivation, like it's your MO, like because you know that people are going to see what you're stepping, everyone's going to be aware. So you realize once you go ahead and give somebody that information, they're going to either cheer you on or taunt you, and either way, it's going to act as a reinforcement, either positive or negative. So
there's a little bit of if you tell somebody all of your information, that you don't want to like let them down or like let the group down. So there's that kind of like element to it. Like when Amanda was saying, we were in our group and we were talking, and Jessica and I had higher numbers than her, and she felt like, oh my gosh, I need to step it up, and she was just pacing around her couch.
Yeah, those things definitely. The thing that I was thinking of, a couple of you said, and I'm still using it now.
Yeah.
And that right there, that speaks a lot to the intervention. Like even with the issues with the charging, you know, you're still using it. You still found it motivating. So I think that definitely speaks volumes. And then you something. Oh, did any of you feel like, I'm guessing that your expectations were that you were going to have more steps during the socially mediated phase. So did any of you feel like that might have biased your results a little, knowing that that's the phase you were in, and the graph is supposed to go up here?
Definitely.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
I mean, all of us had read the study before, so that's a bias right there.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's a real tough one to control for when you know the conditions and what's expected.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe why when I look at my steps in my graph, like having that previous knowledge and knowing, okay, like socially mediated, I'm supposed to be like way up here, and my results weren't so stark that I thought that it wasn't as productive for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what did each of you learn from doing this study? Tell me one thing that you learned.
I learned that I don't step as much as I probably should be. I'd always think, like, I wouldn't look at it for a while, and I'd be like, surely I'm at like 8,000. It was like 4. I'm like, what? Like, there's no way. Walking around all day. So that for me is kind of, I just realized that I need to do more.
I think for me, like, I'm a big proponent of technology, and I think that it's a really good thing that we can have our children and our clients utilize. But also when we were doing this, like just realizing like all of the technical issues that you can't control. That was a huge like setback for me sometimes.
Including with Google Hangouts.
Seriously.
I think for me, I don't know, I always heard that, you know, like it takes 2 weeks to like kick in a habit, because I feel like when I first started, I was like kind of motivated and biased, like, okay, I got to get more steps because it is a socially enabled phase. But by like the last 2 phases, which was like basically 2 weeks into it, like I was pretty steady, and I've been like staying steady at like that 10,000 mark, even in the non-social group, because I was just like, I can do this. Like I would wake up in the morning and work out. I feel like I was just more motivated, like, okay, like I can do this. Like I had someone supporting me, and now I'm just ready to keep going.
Good. And that's a really good point about the reversal design, that once you developed that habit, it was hard to reverse it. And so possibly, you know, if you were to do something similar in the future, a multiple baseline design might be able to combat that, where you could go across participants. But that's a really good point.
Yep.
I think I definitely learned that my steps really depend on work. I'm a special education teacher, and it really depends on what behaviors I'm experiencing in the classroom. If I'm taking the kids off campus to do something, it's really contingent on work, because after work, yeah, I'm dead. And that was the most difficult. Like I would only be at 2,000 or 3,000, and everyone else was at like 5 or 6. So I can't do it.
Yeah, and then you had to sit down at your computer to do your online courses. So
Yeah.
definitely lifestyle and all those requirements certainly play into that.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you guys have any questions for me? No? Okay. And what I'll do is I'll send Mary some discussion questions that she can answer via the discussion board. That way she can give her input as well, since she experienced those technical difficulties.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Okay, so then you'll just upload the video to the discussion board and then also submit it